Alrighty, I have 4 o'clock, so I call to order the regular meeting for February 2022 of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors. Do any of my fellow board members have any comments at this time?
Madam Chair, before we go there, we have a citizen's comment that I need to read to yep, that was addressed to the library board.
Oh, thank you.
And then to follow that, there'll be, it may have a legal comment, just to put it in context. So this came to the library from a resident of Johnson County, Sherry Williams of Shawnee, and she identified as a volunteer for Cultural Shield Network. So her request goes, the purpose of this letter to appeal the rejection of an 11:17 framed poster, motto of the United States of America, from being displayed in the public area of the library. Library Administration Regulation 2080-23 cited as reasons for non-acceptance. The purpose of offering the poster seemed to have been misunderstood. Therefore, I am writing to appeal the decision. August 5th, 2021, as a volunteer for Cultural Shield Network, I presented a frame 11:17 colored poster of our national motto, pictured in this letter, to Michelle Holden of the Monticello Library with a request to have it permanently placed in a public place in the library. It was received conditionally, and the next day I received word it did not meet proper standards for posting on the bulletin board at the library per 20-80-23 library regulation. This regulation explains use of information for temporary placement on the bulletin board. She offered a second option of using the position zone of the library for this poster. Neither application is appropriate for a framed permanent wall hanging. This framed poster are supplied by the Cultural Shield Network, and our effort is focused on placing them in public buildings throughout Kansas and the United States of America. This wall hanging is offered as a gift to the library for purpose of display of our national's lawful motto, "In God We Trust." Some background information on the United States motto. July 30th, 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed into law "In God We Trust" as our nation's motto. In 2006, the US Senate reaffirmed "In God We Trust" as the national motto on the 50th anniversary of its adoption. In 2011, the US House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly 396-9 to reaffirm "In God We Trust" as the official motto and encourage this display in public buildings, public schools, public libraries, and other government institutes. State and local lawmakers are also passing measures to ensure our motto is on display in our public buildings. No court anywhere in the United States has ever held that the public posting of "In God We Trust" violates the Constitution. Anti-faith groups continually challenge the constitutionality of the motto, and time and again they have failed. Courts across the country repeatedly affirm the constitutionality of our motto and resolutely rejected the notion that it promotes the establishment of a religion. I request that the Johnson County Library Board, who was established to serve we, the people of Johnson County, might reconsider the initial decision based on the information provided in this letter. On behalf of the Cultural Shield Network, I request the Library Board accept the gift of one framed poster for every branch library in the system in order that every branch building might display proudly the United States motto in the public area of each branch library. Thank you for your consideration for this request. Sherry Williams, Shawnee, Kansas. That concludes that. Fred, did you have anything that, any comment on this that you would like to give at this stage?
Well, when you and I spoke, you thought that it might be helpful for me to explain to the board kind of the background of library regulations on this. And the concern here is that the library has to be very careful not to create what the law calls public forum spaces. if you accept one public document and post it on a library space, there's the potential then for that to be what the law calls a public forum. So library regulations are very clear. For instance, ARMS section 20-80-22, subsection A, flatly states the library offers no public forum spaces for displays and exhibits. And you can understand the reason for this. If you display one item, then another citizen may want to display another item, and you may have your walls covered under the public forum documents or doctrines. So the library just simply doesn't have any public forum spaces. Now, what it does have, though, is a public bulletin board. And that's covered by 20-80-23 of the regulations. And that potentially would be a place where something like this could be shown. But by posting it, the library creates, in essence, a public forum space, which would be in violation of library regulations. So that's why the response that was given here on this request by the citizen was appropriate under library policies. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you, Fred. Since this was a citizen's comment, I think we'll just take that information under advisement. And if any member of the board wants to see a change in our policies, they are well within their rights to present a motion and we could discuss it at that point. Are there any other public comments?
Madam Chair, there are none at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Then do any of my fellow board members have any comments that they would like to make? I'm gonna take that as a no. We have, I guess it's that appointment time of year where commissioners have been assigned to the library. As far as I understand, Janae is coming back to us. Am I correct with that? So
That
I'm
is
not
correct,
really,
Madam Chair, you're
No.
stuck with me again.
so it's not really a welcome for somebody new, but yeah, you get to stay with us for another year. So
It's
That
my
is-
pleasure. I really, really enjoy it and appreciate the opportunity. So thank you for having me back.
well, excellent news. We also have, for us as a board, we are heading towards that time of year where we choose our officers. And so we need to appoint a nominating committee. And so is there anybody, Sean, can you clarify for me in terms of timeline? I know that our election is not until April. Do we need to have the nominating committee appointed now so that in March they can tell us the slate and we vote in April? Or do we need to have the nominating committee by March and they have from March until the April meeting to do their work?
You can do it either way. I believe that the persons that new board members come on in May, and so that's kind of the schedule that we go with. We can create it today, or we have enough time to create it in February for March and April.
Okay, then I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a heads up that right now I'm looking for volunteers, but if nobody reaches out by March, then I will be forced to volunteer people to help out. So just keep that
Stephanie?
in mind.
I volunteer.
Kelly, was that
Kelly
you?
Kilgore. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kelly. Anybody else know that they would be willing to serve now so we could just do that? Okay, then I will give everybody else a little bit of time to think about that. Thank you, Kelly, for stepping up now.
Bethany, this
Um,
is Mika. I'd be happy to serve too.
Okay, well, excellent. Thank you very much. Ooh, only one more. Come on, we can do it. We can do it.
I can do
Bueller, anyone?
I can do it also.
Okay, was that you, David?
That was me.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, look at that. Teamwork makes the dream work. The other little bit of information we have is now that hopefully the pandemic is on the wane and we're seeing events start to happen again, we are coming up towards different types of conferences. There's ALA, there's PLA, and so I believe, Patty, did you send an email out with all of that information to everyone, or was that just to me?
That information has been made available for the board on the board portal.
Okay, fantastic. So if you are feeling like traveling and doing interesting library things, there are several options for board members to consider. So please have a look at that, and then you can contact Patty if you would like to go. I highly recommend ALA. I got to go twice. Both times it was incredibly interesting and I learned a lot. And so it's really just fascinating. And if you are a book hoarder like me, I could tell you to bring another suitcase, because I'm not lying when I say I had to buy one on Amazon and have it shipped to my hotel. Like, not even lying a little bit. So it's an excellent event. So if anybody would like to do that, there's stuff for trustees, board members, foundation, library employees, staff, books, all kinds of stuff. And it's a wonderful event if you are interested. And then the last little bit is we have an announcement from the county librarian. So Sean, if you want to do that, and I will reserve my comments for right after.
Yep. So I met on February 1st with Bethany, and I will be retiring from the organization on July 1st. I want to take this moment to thank the library board for the trust they gave me to lead this organization for the last 10 years, specifically Mitra, who is part of the hiring team. It has been one of the joys of my life doing this. I also want to thank the commission for their support of libraries and my position and literacy throughout the last 10 years as we're doing, and also for the support that the commission has given for our capital projects and the investment in public libraries moving forward. I want to thank Fred and Andy for their counsel and my administrative team, but most of all, I want to thank the library staff. They have what breathes life into this library system. Our library managers and the people that work and come in throughout the last 2 years during this pandemic, and I'm assured that people have access to information and kind of materials that they need to kind of answer their life questions. It's been a true joy and a great privilege. I want to say thank you very much. Thanks. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I said a dirty word when he told me that he was retiring. So, and I stand by that firmly. You will be missed as you retire, but I completely understand wanting to make that change, and we will miss you very much. But we have a robust organization, and a great deal of that is due to your leadership. But we'll hail Cedar in July when he actually retires. Until then, we have some stuff to do. For my fellow board members, this obviously puts us in a position where we are going to have to fill the position, which is by statute one of our sacred duties. And in March, I will come to you with a plan after I have a chance to talk with staff and county HR, and we kind of get all of that information. Then I will have a better idea of how that process will work, but we have many, many months to do that. And so the start of that process will be in March to take us forward into what the next phase of our county librarian leadership will be. But just for everyone from the board, for county staff, that Sean and his admin team have gone through great strides, maybe with a wee little bit of help from the board, to make sure that our organization is robust, that we have a succession plan in place, which really was more for emergencies, but also for these kinds of things. So we will be looking at all of our options, and the library will still be in excellent hands throughout this transition, and then whomever takes up Sean's mantle next. So we're still in a pretty good spot. That is really all from me. So we can move on to the Friends of the Library, unless there are any other remarks that anybody wants to make before we move on. I'm going to take that as a no, so we can head on to the Friends.
Good afternoon. My name is Shanta Dickerson. I am the Director of Operations for the Friends of Johnson County Library. I'll just take a moment to say congratulations, Sean. I know that you will be sorely missed. It really has been wonderful to work with you, and we're so excited to see what your next chapter brings. And when you're ready to volunteer, we have some boxes for you to break down. We will have them still in 6 months, I'm sure. So we'll jump into the report. I'd just like to say good afternoon to Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the board, Commissioner Hanslick and Mr. Casserly, for this time to report on Friends progress on behalf of our executive committee today. There are two subjects in the report detailing recent activities. To start, I'd like to invite you to join us as we welcome 2 new board members to Friends leadership, Stacy Bunk and Karen O'Mara. Both of these women are currently serving already on our finance committee, and they're digging in. They've begun to review policies and are helping us prepare for our triennial review of agreed upon financial procedures. So we don't waste time when it comes to the work of the Friends, we get right to it. To start with Stacy, she brings a wealth of experience to her new role. She studied political science at Trinity University in Texas and earned her JD at KU in Lawrence. She also served as an editor of Kansas Journal of Law and Public Policy while she was there. She practices employment law with Ogletree Deakins. It's an international law firm that specializes in labor and employment law. Just a wonderful resource to have through her. She's worked at Ogletree Deakins for the last 15 years, and she has also served as the managing shareholder of the Kansas City office for the last 15 years. Next up, Karen O'Mara. She is an accounting professional with 15 years of experience serving clients in a variety of industries. She's studied business and communications at Oregon State University. She's currently with BKD LLP of Kansas City as a supervisor and assurance services project leader. And she's wonderful already helping us. If you're in the finance world, you may know the term AUP, just helping us work on our bid and get everything lined up for that financial review. Next up, construction continues at the Friends Sorting Center as we prepare our space as a place to hold periodic pop-up sales. And it really is looking lovely. The walls have been patched and painted. New flooring is in the restrooms and break room. Concrete floors have been thoroughly scrubbed. A decade of muck has been taken up. So next up is shelving. That has been wonderful. We are so grateful for the library's generosity in loaning us shelves as we move forward in testing our new sort to sell business model. For our wonderful community supporters who keep us so well supplied with gently used books and audiovisual items to sell, we thank you for your patience as we have temporarily put the donation acceptance process on pause. And we ask that you hold on to those treasures just a bit longer. And I am so excited to announce that we will be accepting donations again starting Saturday, February 19th. And it will be the same drill as before. Show up at the sorting center between 10 a.m. and noon, weather permitting. And we have wonderful volunteers who help unload vehicles and hand out tax receipts as requested. So I'll wrap up just to say, let's take a moment to remind our listeners to join or renew membership at joinjclfriends.org. When you become a friend, you increase our visible community support. It's simply one of the easiest ways to let everyone know how much you value Johnson County Library. So we look forward to you joining us. And that's it. Do you have any questions for me or the friends?
I think we're good. Thank you very much for your report and for everything that you do for the organizations. Okay, we now have the Johnson County Library Foundation. Miss Stephanie, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent.
I'm here. I miss, like, when we were in person, the Friends Foundation would, get up and change places and we'd do a little high five. So I'm going to do a little high five to Shanta. Great work. The Friends are doing such amazing work. It's very exciting. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Stephanie Stolzheimer, and I'm delighted to report on behalf of the foundation from the beautiful Central Resource Library. We're starting to get settled into our new spaces, and it's stunning. So thank you to everyone who's made this possible. For my report, a lot of it is just closing out 2021. The foundation wrapped up its 25th anniversary celebration, and we are amazed and grateful for the ongoing support from donors and volunteer leadership. The annual appeal, which is that year-end wedge, frankly, between Thanksgiving and New Year's, the theme was making a difference for 25 years. It wrapped up and the results are good. We had 151 donations totaling $36,640. In addition, we do track donations from the whole year, and those donations are looking really good. And I will have that for you next month. So that's sort of that. The thing I do want to emphasize is we have an impact statement. If you were there, I would put this at your place. It's a statement that is a report on total dollars that the foundation provided to the library in 2021. And it was a really, really good year. It was basically, it was $355,392 transferred from the foundation to the library. We raise money, but it doesn't always go immediately to the library. So these were dollars that literally went to the library last year. Of note, $123,000 went to the collection, $51,000 went to online programming, $26,000 went for that Virgin unit that Sean mentioned earlier. I think John mentioned, maybe he didn't. He may have mentioned it in a different meeting, but there's this fabulous unit in the kids area that's called the Virgin unit. $26,000 came to the library from the foundation, the Rainier Family Foundation, and the Spears Trust. $56,000 went to the Makerspace from Black and Beach. $60,000 went to Race Project KC. We have a full posting of that impact statement on the foundation website. As we kicked off 2022, we also hosted a virtual appreciation event January 16th with Johnson County Library's own Greg Windsor. He's a Reader's Advisory Librarian, and he shared his must reads for winter and spring. It was just great. It was just great. What can you say? The guests were loyal and longtime donors to the foundation, the friends, and volunteers. His presentation is on the website as well. So if you go to jocolibraryfoundation.org, you can see the impact statement. You can see Greg Windsor's, literally the recording of the presentation and his just list of must reads if you want to cut to the chase. And finally, early this year, we've started strategic planning again, which strategic planning is always an important part of what any organization does. I think Bethany may even pop in and help us a little bit. So that really does conclude my report. Are there any questions?
Hey, Stephanie, there was just one other, there was 22,000 that the foundation also gave for new children's furniture at Cedar Row. And I kind of wanted to highlight that and say thanks also.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we had a donor who just loved Cedar Row, and it was bequest. It was a bequest gift. So it was the last thing he wanted to do was to give money to make Cedar Row better. And the team over at Cedar Row created this really another beautiful children's area. So that's very, very, thank you, Sean, for pointing that out. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for everything you do. And of course, for all of the work that the foundation does on our behalf to support our mission. We appreciate it. And it is always really nice to see the real world impact of that. Not gonna lie, maybe a couple pictures next time to show us some of the snazzy things that you've been able to get would be kind of fun, especially if we have some fun chairs or little doodads or whatever.
Okay.
To actually show us what the impact looks like live and in Technicolor would be nice.
Yes. Yes, Bethany. And I will just say, Scott Syme may, spoiler alert, Scott Syme's going to have something for you.
Well, that would be awesome too. So it's just nice to be able to actually see what some of those things are instead of just reading about it. And some things you can't take pictures of. So.
You're right. Point taken. Thank you, Bethany.
That would be cool. The makerspace we got to see on the tour. Can't wait for that to open back up with all kinds of snazzy things. So thank you for all of that. And next, Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple brief comments this afternoon. Three major issues that the County Commission has been and will be addressing. One is the Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant. You may have been reading in the news a bit about that. As many of you know, the Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant, which is out near DeSoto, operated from 1942 to 1992, producing explosive powder and munitions for the Army. And it is now a contaminated site that has been under a cleanup from the Army. There's a lot more history there, but in November of last year, the city of DeSoto annexed about 6,000 of the 9,000 acres of that plant with the intention to develop it with a developer. And this is a huge step for our county to see that property, which has been sitting really unused and unproductive for many years. And the County Commission took some action today that helped move that forward. So if you've not been out there, I would highly encourage you to drive out by the plant out there. You can't actually go in it because it's a fenced, secured area, but it is a fascinating place. And I think, and Sean can confirm this, I believe that all of the documents related to the history of that plant are actually kept at the DeSoto Library, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think they're kept in a library system. I do not know off the top of my head if you can get them at DeSoto, but I know that we have them within the system and we can lay our hands on them.
Yes,
absolutely.
So there's definitely connection with the library there. Secondly, another big issue that will be coming before the Board of County Commissioners in the next couple months is the review of the Johnson County Planning Commission's recommendations for guidelines in the county for utility scale solar farms. We do have a committee of the whole on February 24th, where the commission will not be taking any action, but we'll just be hearing updates from our staff. And we are currently in the process of trying to schedule an extended period of time for a public hearing on those guidelines. As you can imagine, there are some strong feelings on various aspects of those guidelines, and we want to make sure the public has plenty of opportunity to express their thoughts about these guidelines. And then finally, next week at the County Commission meeting, the BOCC will be revisiting the current health order regarding mask requirements in K through 6. So as Madam Chair had said, the numbers are looking better, but whether or not we take action to change that health order will be discussed next Thursday. And then finally, I know you always want to know, what are you reading? What are you reading? Well, I really am a wannabe attorney, so I envy Fred and Andrew, but I have a special fascination with constitutional law. So the book that's on my shelf right now is called The Great Dissenter. It is the biography of Supreme Court Justice John Marshall Harlan, who is a fascinating character because he's known as the Great Dissenter because he was often the lone voice in dissenting on some very unfortunate Supreme Court cases. One of the most famous is Plessy versus Ferguson, if you're familiar with that, which upheld the idea of separate but equal. Later, that was basically overturned by Brown versus Board of Education, but Justice Harlan wrote the dissent in that case of Plessy versus Ferguson. And even more fascinating and more directly relevant in some ways to today, he did write the majority opinion in a case in 1905 called Jacobson versus Massachusetts, in which the Supreme Court upheld the Cambridge, Massachusetts Board of Health's authority to require vaccination against smallpox during a smallpox epidemic. So he is a very interesting person, and I'm looking forward to learning more about him as I delve into his biography. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to take those. Otherwise, thank you.
Commissioner, would you be willing to update the board on your special board meeting that you had on Tuesday? Because I think it will help us understand, if we're meeting in person or next month, or we should still be virtual.
Sure. No, thank you, Sean. That was last week. That's a long time ago. Yes, actually on Tuesday, the Board of County Commissioners met in a special meeting to discuss whether or not to go back to in-person county commission meetings and meetings across the county. And there was a unanimous decision by the board to return to in-person meetings with appropriate mitigation and safety considerations. And so this morning, we did go back and have our meetings in person. So glad to answer any questions about that.
So just before this library board, that means previously, and Commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong, that the commission made a request that all boards, such as the library board, would go virtual as we went through the Omicron. They've lifted that restriction. It gives you the choice to meet in person if you want in March, or to still be virtual, that you can go either or, and we will follow their guidelines and the Department of Health and Environment with that. And again, as we're looking at the reopening, we're looking to get the board back into Carmack as soon as possible. It's a technology issue to make that room ready. And I also want to say to the commission and to this library board, They used the BOCC meetings used to be streamed on Facebook, and this has been the first official meeting, I believe, that they are now being streamed to YouTube. If you can't find them on Facebook, go and take a look on YouTube, and it gives a very good, it's a very good streaming service. So thank you, Commissioner.
Sure, and thank you for mentioning that, the YouTube also. Part of that decision was because in order, a lot of people don't have Facebook accounts, and YouTube, you can watch it and you don't have to sign up for anything or have an account, because there are a lot of folks who, for various reasons, do not want to use Facebook. So this way provides more equitable access to those streaming, that streaming social media presence. And of course, the BOCC meetings are always available on the county's website, where you don't have to have any registration or any kind of an account to watch them. So yes, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Sean, in terms of the YouTube streaming, is that something that we have looked into, or is this kind of a technology update?
We've not officially looked at it, but I imagine that we will follow counties' direction that they're going, because I think for the same reasons, and I think many people appear to be moving away from Facebook for a number of reasons. And I think if we want to provide the greatest access or ease of access, then YouTube, without having to sign up, makes a lot of logical sense. I think when we were first struggling to stream library services, we went with the easiest technical solution to get up and running, which was Facebook for us. But I think you will see us probably move shortly as the technology is just evolved and allowing for this. More and more customers want that kind of ability.
Yeah, I would certainly be interested in making sure that there isn't any kind of barrier to somebody who wanted to watching our proceedings. And even though the Facebook one is kind of inadvertent, it is still a barrier from watching in time. I know that they eventually end up, I think, on YouTube, but if there's a way to do that, I certainly think that the board would be interested in making sure that we have as equitable and available methods of transparency, and anybody who's interested watching us in real time. And I think that also gives us better captioning options as well.
Give us better captioning, though. We do have closed captioning here, which is an add-on service. And also someone's I think Alyssa texted me to say, just to remind everyone that we provide links on our website to past recorded library board meetings. So access, I think real time is really important, but universal access over time is also important. So yeah. we'll, and I'm sure we'll eventually sometimes move away from YouTube and go with whatever new technology is.
The way the technology goes.
Yeah,
okay,
that's for sure.
Anybody have any other comments or anything for questions for Commissioner Hanslet? I don't hear any, so I think that means that we probably can move on. So, Mr. Logan, Esquires.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We were asked to comment on the Kansas cash basis law, a very long-standing law in Kansas. And I thought I would read to you from a 2020 opinion of the Kansas Court of Appeals, where they applied the Kansas cash basis law, and a bank lost a case as a result under this long-standing law. And the judge said in his opinion, when you do business with a city in Kansas, you must be cautious. It differs from doing business with an ordinary person or company. There are many complex laws and rules that govern a city's actions that do not apply to others. A failure to understand this complexity can lead to losing what was once thought certain. This case is an example of that peril. And what the court is talking about is a cash basis law, which the court said provides it shall be unlawful for the governing body of any municipality to create any indebtedness in excess of the amount of funds actually on hand in the treasury of such municipality at the time for such purpose. Any contract entered into between the governing body of any municipality and any person which violates the provisions of that act shall be void. So the library historically has taken a very careful approach on this historically. And the easy way to make sure that you never run afoul under this law is to do one-year contracts and then to renew those contracts. There could be exceptions where you entered into a multi-year contract that, for instance, could be terminable on 30 days written notice. But there's a reason when you see these one-year contracts come up and then they're renewed annually, it's basically because we know that way that the funds are allocated for that purpose, and there can be no problem under the Kansas cash basis law. So that's historically been the library's very careful approach under that law, and why you see renewals of contracts where money may be spent on an annual basis. So I think that gives you an overview of that. And interestingly, that was a very recent case. That was October of 2020 when that came up, and the bank lost on that case under that law. So any questions about Kansas cash basis law?
If we're restricted based on the cash basis law, how do we do debt then?
Well, that's different because you've got an authority. We now do our debt through the Public Building Commission, which has explicit statutory authority to do that. And then the important thing to remember on that, though, is that then the payments on that debt are budgeted annually. And so it's all approved and very open. So that's a very good example, though, of a careful use or careful use of debt around that cash basis law.
So that we then still have kind of the oversight.
That's correct.
Yearly, but it doesn't hamper us from doing public business.
Right.
Okay.
Or public debt, I should say, that where you, for instance, issue bonds, Public Building Commission issues bonds. It's all a very open process. And the important thing is those funds are budgeted then on an annual basis. So it's not like you enter into a $15 million contract and, well, we don't know how we're going to pay for it. So that's different.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Logan?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. I believe it's Mr. Bratney with possible spreadsheets and numbers.
Sorry, I'm just trying to unmute myself there. Good afternoon, board. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and go to my favorite sheet in those spreadsheets. And that's on your board packet, page 9, which is our library total revenue report. It being February, we're looking at December 2021. And in particular, the end of the year. So we've gone through 100% of 2021. The numbers that are being provided, they're unaudited numbers. There may still be a few adjustments that are outstanding here as we haven't actually closed our books yet. But for the most part, what we have collected and what we have spent should be pretty close to where we'll finish. Just directing it kind of towards the bottom there of the revenue part, we recorded $41,137,805, which ends up being about 98.2% of the revenue we anticipated to receive for 2021. So we did quite well there. Again, there are our big lagging revenues were in those library generated revenues that we get by way of our copying, printing, and then just some of our fines and fees, overdues, that sort of thing, which is just kind of, again, we're not I think, completely back to where we were pre-pandemic. And then that ends up amounting to a little over probably about 1% of our loss revenue for the year. The good news is if you go to the next part down there, our expenses year to date, as of December 31st, we had spent a little under 39.1 million. So that ended up only being about 93.3% of what we had budgeted. So there ends up being, at least as of when this report was run, probably about 2 million less spent than what we brought in for the year. So we did quite well there. With that, I'll stand for any questions you might have with regards to our year-end report.
Anybody have any questions? So other than possible hyperinflation and supply line issues, anything from a budgetary point of view for the coming year giving you heartburn or?
Not right now, but yes, inflation is definitely a concern. I saw that the CPI was 7.5, which even shocked a number of the economists and what they were projecting. So, and my guess is real inflation is probably even more than that, just given what I know of the CPI. So, so things are going to be more expensive. Yeah,
everything feels more expensive. I almost had a heart attack when I said I was going to bring bacon to an event, like $9 a pound. I remember when that was steak.
Yes.
So,
yep. Yeah, your hamburgers are your steak. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But other than that, everything feels pretty good for the closeout of the last year and then heading into the next.
I feel like we're in good shape financially. We're very fiscally conservative in terms of how we work our budget. Our revenue streams are still very strong. Again, a majority of our revenue comes in by way of our ad valorem taxes, which are looking very good. Sean and I met with the county appraiser just at the end of last month, and we're kind of just getting some projections of how things were looking. So looks like maybe Commissioner Hanslick has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Dave. I just wondered if you might explain. I noticed in the revenue under the reimbursement line item, it's about double what we budgeted. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so the large part of that actually is our agreement that we have with the city of Olathe, and in particular the Olathe Public Library. We charge them back some portions of agreed to expenses, and it's based on population. So I think they're roughly 23% of the county population and some of the things that they share expenses with us on. And that number has actually grown quite a bit as we've made transition from to having some more e-resources. And that's something that we've been in constant conversations with them about. So it's just grown. And I think what you'll see next month when I put out the revenue, that's an area where we've grown that revenue. And in fact, I've kind of trended down a little bit the in-person library generated revenues. So, and we can talk about that next month, but yeah, it is a growing part of our budget. So we had been probably under budgeting there just a little bit, and then given our pivot in some of our collections from our physical collection to a little bit more e-resources, that's increased that amount that we get reimbursed by the city, by Olathe Public Library. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All righty.
Okay, I'd like to invite Adam to give the monthly statistical report.
Okay. Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Adam Wathen. I'm Associate Director for System-Wide Services, and this month I'll be presenting our annual report comparing our 2021 activities with previous few years. Every January, we submit annual statistics to the State Library of Kansas for inclusion in a national database of library statistics. And so the information I'm presenting today is based on that data that we submit to the State Library and the monthly data that I bring to the board. So we start by looking at circulation and door count. On this, the gray line is our door count, which you can see peaks in 2019 and then drops significantly due to COVID closures in 2020. In addition to the COVID closures in 2020, we implemented COVID restrictions, which limited computer use, meeting and study room use, and in-person programming. And over much of last year, our central resource library has been under construction. All of that contributes to the lower door count in that gray line. Most of those restrictions are no longer in place, and we will be reopening Central Resource Library on February 22nd. And that really gives me hope that we'll see a significant increase in visitation to our libraries over 2022, recovering some lost ground there. The blue line is our physical circulation, which has also been impacted by many of the same factors I described related to door count. We hope that 2022 brings back a significant portion of our physical circulation too, as patrons are coming back through the doors. And the orange line is our digital circulation. As Dave was just talking about, we've seen a significant increase in digital circulation over the last 2 years. The circulation boomed in 2020, increasing there from about 800,000 to about 1.2 million, and then adjusted down slightly in 2019 to what's still a very major increase over 2019 numbers. On the next slide, we're talking about programming over the last 5 years. And you can see that the same COVID factors that I talked about significantly impacted programming. We had very little online programming prior to 2020, and the closure of our libraries forced a very quick pivot to delivering online programming. Our programming staff and managers and our IT staff responded quickly to purchase our online platform to deliver our library on-demand services and to equip our staff with the technology necessary to produce online programming. You can see that both the number of programs and the number of program attendees dropped from 2019 to 2020 and have begun to make a recovery in 2021. 2020 and 2021 programs and attendance are all online. We have been developing plans to restart our in-person programming when the COVID numbers and landscape allows. And the orange line indicates a wonderful new way that we deliver programming through our library on demand. We record many of our virtual programs and make them available for patrons to attend when it is convenient for them. And you can see that nearly 80,000 people viewed these recorded programs over the last year. So that's a new service that had not been available when we were only delivering in-person programming. The next slide is about technology use. And the blue line on the, go ahead.
Yeah, Adam, I don't want to interrupt you because we could go back a slide.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. I just want to point out to the board that on the y-axis on the left, it's one scale, and on the right, it's another. So the blue line in this drawing is using the right scale, which is showing 1,000, and then the left scale is showing it the 100,000. Just so you're aware, if we had used the same scale, the blue line would have looked just very flat. And
yes,
so this is a way to actually show, but I want to make sure that you know that alert you to the fact that there are two scales that we're looking at on the y-axis.
Yeah, that blue line is the number of programs that we presented, and the green line is the number of attendees. And so they're significantly different numbers, and I wanted to show them in relationship to one another. So we use two different axes there.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, so in the technology use, starting with the blue line, you'll see the number of patron wireless sessions in our libraries. And this, of course, tracks very closely with our door count, that people who come into the library and use their cell phone are connecting to our wireless. And so as we closed branches in 2020, the wireless sessions dropped dramatically. They have recovered a bit in 2021, and we expect significant gains in 2022 after the reopening of Central. The orange line tracks the public computer use. And And the gray line tracks the number of public computers. And as Sean was describing in the previous, you can see that that gray line is connected to the right axis there. It's the number of computers are on the right, whereas the computer uses connect to the axis on the left. And so the drop in number of public computers coincides with the construction of Central Resource Library and a reduction of public computers there when we went from the big central to the little central concept. And we're also moving our laptop lending unit from the Monticello Library to the Central Resource Library, which has taken that set of public computers offline. We lend laptops out of that unit to the public. We will restore most of these public computers when we reopen the Central Resource Library on February 22nd, and so that number should go up this year. The drop in computer use also came with our COVID closures in 2020 and is coming back slowly as we see patrons return to our spaces. And finally, on the last slide, you can see our user counts. Our annual library survey asks us to count active users as those who have used the library within the last 3 years. And so you can see that we had a significant drop in user count at the end of 2021. We purged those numbers regularly so that we can keep track of how many people have used us within 3 years. This is likely due to the disruptions of services, of course, that we had through the last couple of years. And you can see that that yellow line, which is our new user numbers, dipped significantly in 2020. We saw a decent recovery in 2021, and we hope to see further recovery in 2022 for our new users and bringing that number of current users back up. Those are our hopes. Are there any questions about these 4 areas?
Thanks, Adam. I'm just going to go back. There was an agenda item called Personnel Review Committee, and what I want to talk about is I will be going, I think it is February 16th, before the Personnel Review Committee. I'll be asking for 4 positions. 3 of those positions, one of them is for Antioch. So one of them is a full-time person to run the new drive-through at Antioch, and then the other 2 positions are 2 part-time people. Antioch will be open, I think, around between 72 and 74 hours a week. That's why we need 2 part-time people and 1 full-time person. And then the final position will be for a new social media specialist to manage that. And that job historically has been distributed over a couple of people. It wasn't their primary function, but as the library goes and our communication strategy continues to advance digitally, we need someone in that position. And so we've had some preliminary meetings with county and the finance and budget department, and I think, and our HR partner, and I think we are ready to talk about that with the Personnel Review Committee going forward. Dave, is there anything I forgot on that?
Nope. Great recaps, Sean. That's exactly what we're going and asking for. Thank you.
And those issues we've talked about with the budget committee, so those have all been budgeted also. Thanks. Next, I want to invite Scott Slime to come up and give us an update on the Comprehensive Library Master Plan.
Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start with Central today. I'm Scott Slime, Project Coordinator for the library. Next slide, please. Today, I'll talk a little bit about Little Central, where we are as far as moving in, some next steps in the timeline. Okay, next slide. There we go. Here's a look at our statistics. On the left is user visits for Central over 2021. And then in the orange on the right is PC sessions. We had a little bit of an uptick on PC sessions in December. Next slide. What we've been working on since the last board meeting, Central's been a really busy place as Titan has been finishing up the last bits of their work. Our furnishings are mostly in. I'm excited to see the spaces start to take shape, and I've got a few photos toward the end. In addition, technology installations chugging along, going smoothly. Interior signage installation has started. We've been starting getting the new security system ready, which we'll hear about in a little bit here. Our training is in full swing as our phase 1 staff come back to the building, and we're working on getting the collection ready too. Next slide. A few next steps here. Still to come, we are preparing for opening, doing prep tasks for opening. We'll be closing on Monday for the removal of the partitions and transitioning Little Central back into full service Central. And then we're finalizing plans for phase 2 and 3 staff groups to move back in. Next slide. Here's a look at our timeline. We're almost to the end of this project's timeline. And next slide, I've got a couple of photos to show you. Stephanie mentioned one of them during her report. So what you're looking at here on the left is the new kids space. The new stacks are in, the shelving signage has been installed. And then on the right side, you'll see the new kids space, 6x6 space, and then those great virgin pieces that are installed on the wall there. This Spurgeon piece has been generously funded by the Renewal Foundation, Speeds Memorial Trust, and the JCL Foundation. Next slide. This is the last one for Central. I wanted to show a couple of workspace photos, or you'll see our new carts there on the left. And we've been working to standardize these carts across the system. And then same thing with the systems furniture over on the right. We've been working to, this is the same system furniture that they use at the courthouse and the medical examiner facility, and will also continue to be the standard for new buildings to come. So that helps us down the road when we need to reconfigure furniture. And this is one of the many benefits of working with our great partners at county facilities. That is the end of my Central report, and I'd like to go ahead and introduce Cheryl Sickles. She is a web interface designer and our project lead for the security implementation project. Cheryl.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Cheryl Sickles, and I'm here to represent the CVU2 Physical Security Project. Next slide, please. What goes into physical security? There are 3 main components, namely key cards, which are part of our access control systems, security cameras, and the intrusion system, which includes alarms. As part of this project, we've updated technology for all 3 of these, transitioning to new security systems throughout the Central Resource Library. In addition, we also needed to plan out the groundwork strategically so that these systems could be used in conjunction with countywide best practices and be able to adapt to updated security standards over time. Next slide, please. In order to accomplish this, our team drew from key staff members system-wide within the library and also across the county. With the assistance of county facilities and the Sheriff's Office, we were able to leverage the county's existing expertise with our new systems, allowing us to navigate around problems early on and plan for a successful technical outcome, which also provided long-term training plans for the future. Next slide, please. One of the most important outcomes for this project was to ensure that staff would be able to have secure building access when needed as part of each move-in phase. In other words, on day 1, when the building was ready for staff to begin preparations for reopening, we needed to ensure that the right people had the right identification to provide them with the right levels of access. As part of this, all staff ID badges have also been updated to use a new color-coded theme for library staff, our county partners, vendors, and volunteers. You'll see these new badges on everyone working at Central, and they will be distributed to the rest of the branches over the next few months. Next slide, please. As with any physical security hardware, you also have to account for the software which runs it. Our new tools allow us a vastly improved range of controls when it comes to working with our cameras and intrusion system, giving us additional layers of configuration to help manage access and alarms. We have also been able to refine these permissions to a more granular degree, serving a wider variety of roles and needs. Next slide, please. Our schedule aligned with building construction, as substantial areas of the building had to be complete before security hardware could be added. The top blue bar here represents our cameras. While there are a few remaining adjustments to be made, such as correcting the angles of vision, the bulk of the cameras are successfully in place. We have also completed initial branch staff training with a final round of specialized training, which should wrap up at the end of February. The middle orange bar represents our intrusion system. Like the cameras, the intrusion system has been successfully installed with training to conclude at the end of February as well. The final lower green bar represents our key cards, or our access controls. The phases for this portion of the project are directly tied to building readiness, allowing groups of staff to begin accessing the building as each section becomes incrementally available for pre-opening work. We successfully met the major milestone of building acquisition on November 1st and are expecting to provide all central managers with new key cards for their staff by reopening day. All remaining library staff will receive their cards after reopening throughout February and March. Next slide, please. We appreciate all your support in helping keep Central safe and secure for both patrons and staff. Are there any questions we can help answer?
Are we going to have new board IDs? I know that we have ancient key cards.
Yes, you will all receive new and updated ones. We're in the process of working on production for that now. They will be coordinated through Patty, and you should be able to hear any updates from her as well.
Okay. And this is completely and utterly random, Cheryl, but you have a fantastic voice. Like if you ever get done with doing cybersecurity stuff, you could totally narrate audiobooks.
No.
Fantastic.
Like a recording.
Yes. So thank you for a very comprehensive report and for spearheading the physical security project team, but also you have a fantastic voice. That's completely random.
Thank you.
Okay, do any other board members have any questions about this? Fantastic, thank you.
Great job, Cheryl. And we would concur. I think Trisha and we haven't heard you talk on Zoom before, but you have just a voiceover work could be in your future. Just throwing it out there, but don't leave the library. That's also what we're saying. So Scott, would you like to give us an update on where we're at with Antioch, and then just kind of roll on into DeSoto and give us the overall timeline?
Sure thing. Okay, so I'll start with Antioch next, and next slide. I'll give you guys a little bit of a design update today. We've been working with Dake Wells on schematic design. I'm excited for the progress we made. I think it looks really stunning. We're planning to bring a design update to the library board at the March board meeting with Dan McGinn from Dake Wells Architecture. And then we've also just kind of been checking in with professional staff over at the City of Merriam, making sure that they're kind of up to date with what we're doing. Next slide. So we've got a few next steps. The first one I've already mentioned there. Further out, the plan is to get the development plan to the City of Merriam for discussion and approval later this late spring, early summer, and then work through the property transfer and bond sale for this project, and then we'll move on into construction. Let's see, next slide. Here we go. So just looking at the timeline here, no changes since last time. We're still in design. And I think that's all I've got this month for Antioch. Any questions on Antioch before I move into the next one? Okay.
Just to let know, Scott and facilities and some of the admin team met with the city to talk through this in the last week or so. To give them an update, and I'm happy to report that the city was very enthusiastic about what they were seeing and felt that we were heading in the right direction, and that there were elements that they felt really complemented the existing buildings, and they were very excited about just the progress and the direction that we're going. So again, great partnership with the city of Merriam, and I want to thank Scott and the core team from facilities for working so well with them. Scott.
Thanks, Sean. Next up is DeSoto, Spring Hill, and Edgerton renewal study. Next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about staff and public engagement and give you a few next steps. On staff and public engagement, we've started talking with staff at these 3 libraries. That was maybe toward the end of January even. We are planning a virtual listening session for the public at these 3 locations. That date is Thursday, March 3rd. It'll be in the early evening. I think 5:30 is what we're planning as far as a start time. And this will be real similar in feel to what we did for the Antioch replacement virtual listening session back last spring. We'll have a presentation from Dake Wells. I'm sorry, from, let's see, let me start over. We've got some prompts to get the public's feedback on as far as what they want to see at those 3 locations. And then we'll kind of break into breakout rooms to hear from each one of them, for each one of those buildings. And we're also finalizing an online survey in case folks can't make it to that virtual live session. We're also working on some in-branch posters for those 3 locations just to kind of get the word out. Next slide. After that, after the public session, we'll have a little bit of a debrief on the staff side, and then we'll just spring right into developing those concept design options, and also the budget estimates to go along with them. We anticipate bringing something back to the library board probably in May, where we can start talking about those different options with you. And next slide. Here's a look at our pretty simplistic calendar for this one. Just kind of showing you those big steps that I talked about there. Any questions on the DeSoto, Spring Hill, and Edgerton renewal study?
Hey, Scott, real quick. So you're going to have one big virtual session, and then your rooms will be, there'll be one room for DeSoto, one room for Spring Hill, and one room for Edgerton that people can break out. Is that, am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And if those rooms need to get a little bit bigger just to accommodate the turnout, so maybe let's say DeSoto has 50 people, we might break it into 2 or 3 depending on the group size. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's see. The last thing I'll give you guys an update on is just the overall timeline. And I'll ask the slide driver to go to those slides.
It's frozen. Give me a second.
That's okay. Let me just, while we're waiting for the slide, I wanted to give one more piece of update to the board. We had a chance to meet virtually with the city of Overland Park and talk about, what their plans were for the Blue Valley site and the new library. They're still on board. They have budgeted, I think, $1 million out for kind of the literary park idea. They have a new director of parks, and we got to meet them and worked with Kate Gunja. We talked about the library project on that site and moving forward. And I'm happy to report that the city of Overland Park is still on board with us and will go forward. I think the timing is going to sync up very well with their capital plans. And then we've had email correspondence back and forth with the city of Prairie Village and West Jordan, the city manager. I'm happy to report to the board that the city of Prairie Village is having a meeting this Saturday to talk about these conceptual ideas. And then Fred and I worked on clarifying our library expectations, very similar to others. And Fred drafted a response and I reviewed it. And just kind of talking to them about how we've worked with the city of Lenexa, and how we're working with Miriam, and what we need as a library system. And that was really well received. So I'm happy to report back on that. Alyssa, how is our technology behaving?
So far, so good.
Okay, thanks. I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks. Okay, so next up, I'll talk a little bit about our big capital improvement projects. You're looking at that timeline on your screen. No changes to this one since the last time we saw it. We are just right about at the end for the central project. We're pretty smack in the middle of Antioch replacement, and we're midstream on the DeSoto, Spring Hill, and Edgerton studies too. And then finally, that pink bar down at the bottom, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. That one represents our CRP work, that's Capital Replacement Program. So what you're looking at here, this is a little bit more detail than I showed last month. You're looking at the 4 locations that we're targeting for CRP work this year: Cedar Row, Oak Park, Gardner, and Shawnee. So you get to see those different phases for the work. I want to just take a minute to talk about the timeline, kind of when the closures are planned to occur, and then a little bit about the duration of the closures. So you'll see that Cedar Row is our first one there. That one doesn't need much of a closure. We're thinking it'll probably take about a week to do the remaining work there. We will come back to the library board to request that closure probably at the April meeting. For Oak Park, Gardner, and Shawnee, the closures are just a little bit longer just because of the nature of the work that needs to happen at those locations. You'll see that those are staggered so that we don't have to try to close all of them at the same time, just to keep providing access as much as we can. Those are also in different quadrants of the county. We didn't want to try to stack them all in the same quadrant, for example. So you'll see that we are starting out with Oak Park and then plan to move to Gardner and then go to Shawnee. We did move Gardner back a bit just so that it wouldn't conflict with the summer reading program. That's our largest branch in that quadrant, and summer reading is a big deal everywhere, including Gardner. So we wanted to try to not conflict with that. That is a look at the CRP timeline, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, this may be for Sean, based on what you just said at our board retreat, if I'm not mistaken, we talked about a small chance of flip-flopping the Blue Valley and the Corinth. There's been nothing that's indicated that we should be thinking about that, correct? We'll stick with the timeline that we've established, which is Blue Valley first.
Yeah, there's nothing that says, that there's nothing that's come or additional new information that would be advantageous to swap Corinth and put it in front of Blue Valley. I took a look at some statistics that Jen provided me today, and again, from my point of view, Blue Valley is the area that has the greatest need, just based on usage. And so my recommendation would be to stay with the prioritized order that we have today. There's nothing that I see that's driving it for there to be a change.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, next I'd like Dave to talk a little about where we're at budgetarily with the central staff space consolidation plan. Dave?
Yep, thanks, Sean. Good afternoon again, board. Just going to quickly kind of walk through these slides here. The overall project budget for the central remodel, this most recent one here, is a little over 11.1 million. The 4 numbers underneath it give you an idea of kind of the components that make up that 11.1 million. As you can see, a majority of it, about 74% of it's in the guaranteed maximum price. That's what that GMP stands for. And again, that refers to the highest amount of labor, materials, and profit costs that the contractor can charge us, the customer, on the project. So then there's about a little over 954,000 that were in architectural fees. There's a small owner contingency amount, and then the other big piece is the owner FF&E, which stands for our furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So that's a little over 15%. So those total up to that 11.1 million. Right now, we're projecting to have that project probably finishing with around $270,000 in savings of that 11.1 million. We have some plans to use some of that on furniture replacement and some lounge seating, study tables, chairs for the public, and then reserving those remaining dollars also for any future challenges. So typically we keep a project open for a few years after we've officially opened and the project's closed, just to address small minor things that may come up in the new space, in the old revised revamped space. So and then next slide, please. As you can imagine, in any kind of remodeling project, there are unforeseen conditions that become apparent as you begin to move walls and reconfigure spaces. Below on this slide here, you can see just a number of them that we had to address as we were doing this remodel work. There's some slab grade thickness issues that had to be dealt with, steel modifications, a number of ductwork and ceiling conflicts, changing electrical and data lines that were in the building, dealing with some backflow issues, some water issues, and drain placement type issues. So, and that's just a small list. I think there are others. It's not by any means comprehensive. It just kind of gives you an idea of some of the things that we had to deal with that weren't expected, but nonetheless, we're in the project here. So the next slide, please. There's also opportunities that we had along the way, design alternates and some value-added options that we were able to take. We were able to do those kids' window seats that I think are going to get a great deal of use. We were able to do an outdoor patio space that I think will get quite a bit of use with families in the nicer parts of the year, spring, some parts of summer and fall. We were able to do wireless audio visual in our public meeting rooms. We're able to do new furniture in those public meeting rooms, new shelving in the kids' space. Some of these pictures here, by the way, are in line with those design alternate value-added options. And then new paint through the makerspace and touching up that part of the building. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have, but this was just to kind of give you an idea of where we project to be with the project and some of the challenges and opportunities we were able to, some of the opportunities we were able to take with this project. So I'll take any questions.
For that, I don't know if there's a way to put a wee little Post-it note on the kind of what we have left in the project, but one of the things that I noticed on my tour was the difference in lighting from the newer parts of the building to some of the older ones, and just how much better the lighting was in the new area. And I don't know what the technical term is for the part of the building where you first walk in. I call it a barrel corridor because the girders are kind of, the steel is, I don't know, slightly rounded. I have no idea what the official name of that is, but the lighting in there it just is so much darker than anywhere else in the building. And I know it's hardly the most pressing of need, but that would be one way to maybe be able to upgrade the lighting in there, is to use the overage from the rest of the project, because it's still improving the same building. And that's after everything else that's needed to be done was done. But if there was a little bit left over in that particular fund when we close it out, that might be a nice addition, just because that particular corridor feels really, really dark compared to how vibrant and bright the rest of the building looks, especially with the new, I don't know if they're LEDs or whatever they are, but I just noticed that there was such a stark contrast between that. So I know it'll be a little while before that project is closed out, but somebody write a wee little Post-it note and look at that later.
Thank you. I made note of that. I appreciate that.
Yep, I get to say my 5 favorite words, which is on time and on budget with this, which is good. And I think that has been a challenge. We've taken a run at it a couple of times for lighting that corridor. I think we've made a post-it note, and it's a goal of mine also. I think also the the kids area, particularly with the windows, offers just a whole, which kind of amplifies the light coming in, but also amplifies the problems that we have with that central spine running down the library. It has proved to be a challenging to light that, so it has the same light kind of luminosity across the entire, public space, close to 65 to 70,000 square feet. But post-it notice.
It was a little monastic in that corridor.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
with the glow coming out of like the windows and everything. I can't wait for the public to see just how bright and vibrant that space is. And so you kind of get this moment with the light, but it's a little dark in the middle. So that would be fantastic if we could find even a creative or interesting or artistic solution for that particular bit.
Absolutely. And it, of course, is an opportunity to tell children to walk towards the light, which we should not miss. With that, Tricia, would you be able to take us and step us through the trimester strategic plan update for the 3rd trimester?
I would be happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tricia Solentrop, Deputy County Librarian. If you'll join me on page 47 of your board packet, 3 times a year, I bring you an update on our strategic plan work. And so for those of you who have heard this update before, you'll recognize the structure of it. We have 5 key performance areas. Thank you. Next slide. I forgot about that. And so I'll cover the goals and the accomplishments within those sections. We won't hit every single goal and every single accomplishment. You all had a chance to read through this, but I'll just hit some of the highlights. Next slide, please. With goal 9, next slide, 2 of the things that I want to highlight. Next slide, please. Are the 2 programs that we've had this past trimester, and you'll see some of the details there. So the Race Project KC, I just really wanted to highlight, this is a project we've done for, a partnership we've done for many years. You've heard about it in various ways. I just wanted to highlight the number and the variety of schools that are involved. This has evolved over time, and those partnerships have grown, and we've added new schools as we've got to know more teachers and superintendents and principals, and as those folks have moved around. So it's just a great list of kind of our reach across the metro area. And then the other program from this fall is also one we've done for several years, the Writers Conference. So I just added the statistics in there as far as attendance from 2020, and this is 2020 and 21. So you can see some of those statistics broken down as far as webpage, different emails, total attendance, and then that online or on-demand attendance. So both of these projects represent the library really well, provide access, and our staff does a great job connecting with the community through both of these projects. Next slide, please. Continuing on as a deeper dive into some of the data about programs and trends. As you know, we've went from in-person to online and flirted with going back to online or in person and slowed our roll a little bit on this, but this gives you a sense of that total reach that we've had, broken down by strict attendance, recorded programs which Adam highlighted a little bit during his presentation, and then the total number of programs and outreach going back to 2017. So to give you a little bit of a look back. Next slide, please. This also talks about trends in program and outreach. And so you can see in some cases that outreach those numbers have declined, but then we've certainly been able to capture maybe a different audience or a different combination of those audiences as we've gone online with that programming. Next slide, please. Adam also mentioned our phasing back in of our programming. And so this is our overall approach. And if you have the most recent copy of the guide, you'll see some of those examples. The exhibits that we've brought back, we have a whole slew of brand new exhibits. And as we phase back into in-person, our first step has been with partners, and then we'll step into in-person programming that's more library facilitated. Next slide, please. As we move on to the operations key performance area, and the first and the sixth goal of our strategic plan, want to highlight much of the work that Dave and the Library Board Budget Committee has done, and Dave's staff. One of the large programs or accomplishments that we had was the payroll equity, the second phase. We very proud to accomplish that along with our partners in HR and then county finance and county budget. Dave continues to work on doing cost center analysis. And then we were also able, with the addition of the central building upgrade, to realize a warehouse within central. And so moving towards centralizing supplies, which means centralizing ordering, which ultimately means a more efficient use of our time and our money. And so that, I think, probably has it was Adam's dream, and it has become realized in a very wonderful way. And as you tour the building of the opening, as you see the warehouse space, it's quite organized. So if you love a good organized space, you will maybe not want to leave. But that's a new service, I guess, that we're providing within the library system to staff and helping us keep organized. And then you have heard over the reports from the central building upgrade about our physical security, and we're continuing on that, and that plays right into goal 6. And so we are highly coordinating not only key cards, as Cheryl talked about, but training, and as we work with our staff on, as patrons come back and become more comfortable with the library, kind of making sure that we have that security specialist perspective as we transition staff back into buildings more full-time. Next slide, please. Goal 12 and goal 17, still in the operations key performance area. The assistant branch managers have really probably shouldered much of the change during COVID with staff, and they have adapted to that change in a wonderful way. They are relaunching their system-wide circulation services meetings, and so that's all of the circulation staff being able to meet and discuss. We suspended that for quite some time as they were busy doing other things, and so that's coming back on. So that's one of those things of like we're returning a little bit more to our pre-pandemic ways of gathering staff and discussing things with them and hearing from them. And then goal 17, that's a learning and development work that they have done. We have streamlined our conference request. Since we had maybe about 2 years off of going to conferences, they were able to kind of reconfigure how that happens, and then really able to focus on producing videos, content for staff to learn about the focus areas that we do have at the library. So they've had great success in that development. Next slide, please. In the KPA of community, our fourth goal is to really look at, review and align our partnerships across the county. And so we were able, online we've done that, but certainly in some in-person ways over the past trimester. Many of our favorite people were able to tour Central in various stages, the hard hat tours. So we were able to extend those partnerships, or in some cases reacquaint those partnerships. And then we had a great internal work as we updated the 2020 annual report, which not only highlights the wide variety of partnerships, but really helps us understand how deep those partnerships is and how those partnerships are, and how strong they support the library. Next slide, please. In the key performance area of communication, goal 3 and goal 10, if you'll go to the next slide, please. Goal 3, this really highlights the work that our communication department has done, launching this campaign You may be a person who received one of the Black Library cards or got a postcard delivered to your house or saw the advertising. And so they did wonderful work. There are, if Alyssa ever catches you in the hallway somewhere, she will have oodles and oodles of statistics to give you about the open rate of these things. And she continues to do excellent work and advance the awareness of the library deeper and deeper into the community. Next slide, please. And then a little bit of a more internal look, continuing to refresh, but also deepen those internal processes for communication. So whether that is strategy meetings for the communication department and then helping other departments understand the best way and the best tools to communicate across the organization. Laura Hunt continues to help our staff and our managers see those paths. Next slide, please. And I'll take a minute to highlight, we have two wonderful award recipients. Laura Hunt is one of them. There is a county-wide Leadership in Action Award that is given to nominees across the county departments. This year, there were 25 given across the county, and we had 2 of the recipients. So we're very proud of Laura for all of her amazing work that she has done with internal communication. She got dipped right in the fire of COVID, and we had to figure out how to do a lot of stuff on her, I think, 3rd month. And so she's continued to be really a trendsetter for us and pacing us in a really great direction and holding us to a pretty high standard. So we really appreciate her. And she's probably on this meeting, and if you see her, please congratulate her. And then goal 16, I won't go over because you've heard and seen those reports each month, but that has been the great bulk of our work over this trimester. It's kind of heated up again. Next slide, please. And then this continues in the vein of communication. Again, looking at external communication and email marketing and what are the next layers of that and those next steps. So we were very proud to launch an onboarding email in October. So when you sign up for a library card, then you get an email welcoming you with some further information. Sometimes in person, you might not have the time to hear all of that, and you can see it and read it in an email when maybe you are needing that information to further learn about the library. And then we're refining some of the other newsletters that we have reaching our different citizens. Next slide, please. Many of these projects you are familiar with. This is just a snapshot of the current projects, library-wide projects that we have going on in the library, who their project lead is, kind of where that status is. Many of these you've heard about over the many months, and happy to answer questions about the specifics of them if there are any that you're curious about. Next slide, please. Goal 21, I'm still in the communication key performance area. Much of the work of this goal has been operationalized and continues. And so that's a really good sign. The assistant branch managers have done a great amount of work on this. And so we're really proud of that ability to operationalize processes and procedures and continue that work. Next slide, please. And the key performance area of convenience. And so again, this is a work that you see and definitely have heard about. Those are our buildings, our ADA assessment, staff room refreshes along the way, different configurations that just make our buildings look nicer, function in a much smoother way. Next slide, please. Have a few pictures, the before and after of some roofs, if you've not taken a look or been past Cedar Row and Corinth lately. Next slide. And this is the Oak Park staff refresh. And so this has been a wonderful change. That building needed some love in the staff room area. And so you can see the improvements. It's a little bit more quiet because we've added carpet and just a little bit nicer feel to it. Next slide, please. And then as you've heard about the Rural Renewal Initiative, and just kind of reminder and pictures of those buildings and some of their layouts. That work, as Scott mentioned, has gone ahead. And if you'll advance 2 slides. This is the capital replacement list. So this is more of the details of some of the work that our facilities colleagues have been doing, as well as our branch colleagues. And so much of that is completed. And as we went into the last trimester of the year, just wrapping up some of those smaller projects. Next slide, please. And our key performance area of convenience. Lots of this is IT related and specifically related to the central building. So they just continue to do a significant amount of work. As you can see there, this is also materials handling. So our circulation, but also collections department, the back of the house. Lots and lots of detail there. Probably some of the, they have been responsible for the COVID testing, logistics and organization. So it's not something that they do every day, but they stepped in and figured out how to make sure tests were available to all of our staff and really to county staff at all the locations. So that was a new thing that they got to learn this past trimester. And then they are also working on the review of the Olathe Public Library MOU, which comes before us, before you all every year. Next slide, please. This is another opportunity to brag. And I think Dave may have also hinted at this. So this is the collections budget. It's a pretty large budget. We're almost at $4 million. And if you see right there in the middle, Lacey and her crew, her selectors, and Dave and his staff spent that budget down to all but $72.15. It is maybe one of the most amazing things that we see them do consistently. I'm not sure anybody spends a $4 million budget down to those pennies. So that's a lot of hard work on their end and monitoring it in a normal year, but especially with the supply chain issues. They had to really think through and adjust and keep really close contact with Dave and making sure that those spending deadlines that we have as a county entity, that they were within those. So well done to the collection staff and to the finance staff for managing that so well. Next slide, please. Convenience, again, continues to be IT, and the next, I think, 2 slides are probably very heavy IT. You've heard about much of their work. As you take tours of Central, you might not even notice all the IT, and that's a real credit to them. It's seamless, it's embedded, and just really gives everyone a much better workplace and patrons a much better space to live their lives and do their job. So they have done a great job and have been hard at work at Central for many months behind the scenes. So we appreciate their work. Next slide. This just continues to list out some of the things. A few of those are non-Central related, but different upgrades that they do during the year, specifically the interlibrary loan upgrade, web upgrade or interface that we did this year. Next slide, please. And then this is the second Leadership in Action Award recipient that I get to brag about. This is Ryan Dolan. He is one of our IT analysts. So he is actually somebody who has done a great amount of work helping us get the library meetings online. And so you probably actually see him at those when we've had the meetings in person. He is there for many hours working on every detail of that. So we really appreciate his work and his leadership in that area. Next slide, please. And that concludes the strategic plan update for the 3rd quarter of 21. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great job.
Thank you for a very comprehensive report.
Thank you. Let's move to the next piece, which is the Secession Plan Part 2. So I want to introduce Robin Smith, and she and I worked last year for most of the year on this plan. So just as a reminder, at the last board meeting, we talked about what to do if key members of the organization leave and how those positions would be filled in an interim place. Now, Part 2 is going to be talking a lot about leadership development and succession planning. And could you advance the next slide, please? Okay, and next slide. That was my
Hold
shortest.
on,
That was my
technical difficulties.
That was my shortest presentation. Any questions? No.
All right.
So again, what we were looking here for this was to establish a leadership succession plan, which is developing leaders within the organization. But we also wanted to align those with the development across the board. And also we're really interested in what the standards were and industry standards. You know, how are other companies who are doing this well, what are they doing and why are they doing it? And again, with this job market, it becomes more critical today than maybe ever before to build leaders within your organization. So what we asked Robin to do, who works for the Howe Street Group, is to come in and review and make recommendations for the plan, to work with me, also kind of to assess our organizational culture, going how open, how willing, how inclusive are we, and how committed are we to actually doing that? Where are the opportunities? Where are we underperforming? And where kind of I call them opportunity gaps. So it's my pleasure to introduce Robin Smith. She has been a tremendous kind of asset to help the organization create this plan going forward. Robin, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. And like others, I just want to echo my appreciation to Sean. It's been a real privilege working with him. You will be sorely missed. But we're very happy for your next adventure. So I also want to kind of lean on some of Sean's comments at the beginning of the evening. You know, he referenced staff and he said, hey, they are the ones who breathe life into the organization. And I think it's important to kind of pause and remember that all this work that we're talking about tonight is really about our relationship between the library as an employer and those employees who bring their time and talent to the organization. And this is about making sure that we are recognizing them and supporting their career pathway and creating a working environment where they want to continue to return and lend us all of their wonderful expertise. So I think it's always important to kind of lift up and say, hey, what is this really all about? And I think that's what this is. Go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. As Sean mentioned, this is, you can go ahead. This is a culmination of months and months of work. You may remember, you know, in the previous presentation, we talked about succession planning from a business continuity and perspective. And I'd like to reiterate that that is all a process of planning, not pre-selection. And I think that's really important. But it also sets us up to be able to talk about, you know, enhancing our organizational culture around growth, development, and leadership. And so that was kind of the second part of our work. Really got to dive into the culture, talk to a lot of employees, talk to a lot of managers, and really gain some insights there. So, you know, I'd like to start by saying, hey, we're in a strong spot. You know, employees really value the investments the organization have made in their career and their development. They believe they can connect their work to the larger mission. There's a lot of goodness there. I also like to say you've got leadership that's committed to this work, which is not always the case. So that's yet another benefit here for us. And you know, you've had a wonderful investment in a leadership fund, which enables us to say, hey, how do we become the best stewards of those funds and create really meaningful experiences for our employees? So we're in a really good spot in that capacity. So, you know, just what are some of the things that we kind of took away from this work? There's a lot of good work in the kind of talent management space, right? In the work that is helping engage and develop employees. We just have some opportunity to maybe align those and maximize the work done there. Now that we've done some succession work, we need to determine how that lives in the organization going forward. And, you know, those things that exist kind of in pockets across the organization, how can we make sure that we are kind of aligning those into a bigger purpose? You know, the learning and development team would probably be the first to say, you know, it's been a challenging few years, COVID, rapid transitions to virtual, turnover on staff, but I think I'm happy to say that they're in a better position to be a strategic leader in this space. And so we're already starting conversations with them about how we can take some of the learnings from this phase and apply them to their strategic plans for this coming year. Next slide, please. So one of the, I think, big takeaways we took, and one of the biggest opportunities, I think, for library leadership really exists in the performance management, but also kind of in that cultural, that organization culture around employee performance and behavior. There's a good opportunity for the leadership to maybe clarify or simplify some of the things that the expectations the organization has around employees. And the reason why that matters is so much of what we do around a learning and development perspective is rooted in kind of who we say we want to be as an organization. And quite frankly, out there right now in the ecosystem are a lot of things that we're saying about how we want to operate, how we expect people to perform and behave. And I think it's probably causing a little bit of, I don't know if it's confusion, but it's not an optimal experience for our employees. So there's some opportunity to tighten that up. And then just opportunities to look at our kind of organization structures and norms. Is there anything we can do to ensure that we are supporting the culture that we are saying we want to be, the organization we're saying we want to be? And we'll continue to watch from a systems perspective how our systems or potential future systems can help us support this work. Because right now it's a little bit, we're working in spreadsheets. And so we've got some opportunity to keep track of like the new LMS, the new learning management system, to see if there's any ability for us to interface with that to make this work a little bit more systemized and streamlined. And finally, one of the biggest takeaways I think we had is managers, no question, want leadership development opportunities, but there is an urgent need around just basics of management. I'm a new manager, now what? And so we've had a lot of conversation with the L&D team around what we might be able to do. I've said the words Maslow's hierarchy a number of times. Before employees can kind of go and succeed from a leadership perspective, we got to make sure we're taking care of those basic needs they have around, delegating, people management, employment rules and regulations, just that they need to know to be strong managers. So that's a really fast recap of kind of the big observations we took out of this work. And then I'll jump ahead and I'll kind of really quickly jump through. I'm mindful of our time. Some of the things that I think we can do next. So it is not uncommon for organizations of the library size to have a designated resource for management and leadership. And often you see that managed by one person within a team, of course, but so that you can create a pathway experience. And I think that's an opportunity we have here, obviously in consultation with the learning and development team who's, kind of looking at their resources now. But a number of things that person can do, many of what we just referenced. Okay, next slide. We can skip over this, just a glimpse into some of the tools that we leveraged, and the headline there is, we'll need somebody to continue to leverage those, use those, and grow those in the organization. I referenced kind of the expectations for managers and leaders, and actually jump to the next slide on this one. This is a kind of a framework that came out of this work. And I think if you, after the meeting or when you have some free time, I'd recommend that you spend a little bit of time with this graphic, because I think it was, it is a way to kind of say within the ecosystem of the county and everything that they, the culture that they have provided for us, how can we as a library organization support that, not be in conflict with it, yet also honor the performance and the behavioral goals and desires we have as our own little subculture within the county organization. And so what you see here really was a lot of work to say, how do we complement, how do we leverage, how do we not be in conflict with these great tools that are coming from the county level, but also make them very easy to understand for our employees. So all of this was taken from the PPD documents that employees already have, but built in a way to say, here's how you can potentially be a leader in the organization. And it's not, we're going to challenge that idea that it's just a kind of a people managed hierarchy is a leader in the organization. There's multiple ways you can be a leader, from being a leader in the culture, from being a subject matter leader, to being a people leader. So we're trying to create that pathway experience for employees. You can go ahead to the next slide. And then this goes into what we talked about, right? Leaders want, or managers want leadership development, but there's a real urgent need. And I think you see this in organizations that grow rapidly, that hire from externally. I don't think anything here will surprise you in terms of what they're needing and wanting. And I think it's just a matter of continuing the great work that the learning and development team has done in this space, but prioritizing it, expediting it, and getting it into the hands of the managers so that they can really manage more effectively and more confidently, truly. Next slide, please. And as we kind of think about the plan, how does this all unfold? Again, my recommendation is that the organization focus first on the manager training. All that said, we know from the last meeting, we've got a group of individuals who are strong performers and we believe could step into leadership roles if the need would arise. And so what might we be able to do with them in 2022? And that's really what this is about. Let's come up, before we have kind of a homegrown leadership development program, potentially, what can we do with them in 2022? And so there's a recommendation, and Laura Blair, the Learning and Development Manager, and I have kind of packaged up a little bit of an annual curriculum for the leadership at the library to review and react to. And so we're having those conversations now. And the idea is, let's just not wait on this, right? Let's not keep our strong talent waiting. Let's go ahead and invest in their development now. Next slide. This is just a quick recap of everything I've said. I've gone very fast, but I'll land there, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I think it's been really, really great work. I'm so grateful for the staff, all the managers who were really candid with me, who are eager to help in this space. A lot of just really good stuff happening at the library, and they're really well positioned to jump off from there and do even more wonderful stuff for their employees from a career development perspective.
Thank you, Robin. Great presentation. So, in a nutshell, Robin and I worked on creating the plan-to-plan portion in 2021, and 2022 is about implementation. And so we plan on taking her recommendations going forward, doing the stopgap measure, working with L&D, and 2022 will be the development and rolling out of that going forward. So does the board, before we move on, does the board have any questions about this for either Robin or myself?
But just to make sure I understand, Sean, is that last year was kind of the research and gather information. And then you guys are looking at all of these recaps and then formulating a plan for how to make practical changes within the organization in light of this information, this data, this assessment.
Yep, we're taking the Logan Leadership Fund and the matching money from the foundation. And what we're doing now is beginning to implement these various recommendations, working with learning and development as the central portion, admin identifying the people that are the next level of leaders based on the 9-box criteria, which we've gone ahead and done. And then we're working on the stopgap measure to bring that cohort in, maybe to meet with Fred and Carol, but also to guide them, be the first group of people that we take through this and continue to develop on that leadership, while also developing what is really the meat and potatoes of the project, which is supporting managers on the fundamental things that they need. And so what that came out from the interviews that Robin did was, yes, we learned about harassment awareness training, and we learned maybe about FLMA from county, but when they landed in the job, they were like, okay, how do I navigate Oracle? How do I assure time cards are done? How do I document behavioral issues? Is there a template? I've never done this before. Maybe I've been in management and I've done it this way, and now I have to go and do it the way that the county is expecting that. How do I bring in HR partners and we talk about issues to understand what actions they need to take? Is this a task issue? And then how do we deal with, and which is the biggest issue facing the organization, how do we help managers and give them the tools to support staff who are experiencing burnout and fatigue? And we have methodologies and approaches to handle all of those things going forward. Now we have the framework in place that we can build this and that it can be sustained for years. So that was really the kind of, that's the phase of the project that we're in now.
Okay, thank you, Robin, very much for all of your time and energies. I feel like I kind of got hit in the face with a fire hose, but I think I'm absorbing it all.
I have
We
one more.
are here if you have any continued questions. We're happy to answer anything here or otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I have one more request that kind of came in. It's a little bit time sensitive, but the issue came from the election office. And the request was if they were able to use the Lackman Library as a early voting polling place. The building is located in an area that is not currently close by any advanced voting locations. And they would envision using the building for that. There were 2 times, I think it was August and November, that they were looking for. I talked to Fred Sherman, made the request, the county election commissioner, and I said I would bring it to you and ask for your approval to move forward to work with Fred as far as setting up an MOU and the logistics of making this happen. I think anything that we can help to promote or support the elections office is good for our county and is a good for democracy.
Okay. Do we need a motion, or are you just looking for permission to look?
I'm just looking, yeah, for guidance and if anyone has needs more information, I'll be happy to prepare that, or if you need Fred to come and actually make a motion, but I'm wanting to see if there's any objection. My recommendation would be to work with Fred in the elections office to see if we can make this happen. Ultimately, we're going to be selling that location, but we still have it in our possession.
Okay. I have zero problem with an MOU with the election office. Does anyone have any initial comments, questions, concerns, things that you would like Sean and Fred to particularly look at?
I think it's a good idea. Is there any cost for us associated with it, or would they, I mean, like custodial or maintenance, would we have to do anything for that to be used?
Yeah, there'll be a cost, but it won't be substantial. We're not doing any remodeling. What we may have to do is ask our facilities partners to go in and clean the building. There may be some equipment pickup that our staff might need to do and are rearranging that. But if there is substantial cost that I'm not aware of, then that would be something we would pump the brakes and I would come back to the board. I would not be expending, any unusual amounts of money above just normally making the building available would be something. And again, we have restrooms in that. And so during the election time, there would be a cost to keep those clean and supplied with soap and paper. But I think it's a good partnership. And I think it's in line with, it's in line with our mission. So again, I'm an advocate for this.
Okay, I agree. And the other thing is, was there some consideration or some problem with that building being ADA compliant? Is that going to cause any issues for them?
No, because we can keep the building done. If we were to do any construction on that building at that point, we have to then meet the new ADA standard. But ADA, most buildings are grandfathered into the previous ADA standard, which it does comply with. But when we're going to make changes, then we have to meet the new requirements. And we're not planning on making any changes to that building. We're just about opening the doors and making it presentable for Fred and his staff to use that and have access.
Okay, I'm not really hearing any objections or concerns right now, so go ahead and.
No, I completely agree. I think it's a good idea to offer that available, and I don't think we're gonna have it ready to be sold by November.
No, it's going to probably take 6 months to get the appraisal and go through all the permissions. So I think we're in a good situation to be supportive of the county and the elections office on this initiative.
Okay. Fantastic. Is that the end of your report then and on to the consent agenda?
Mercifully, it is.
Huzzah! Okay, I would take a motion to pass our consent agenda unless anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns about it.
This is Mitra. I'd like to make a motion to pass the consent agenda.
Thank you. And I need a second, please.
Second.
Okay, was that you, Kelly?
I think there are a couple of us, but
Okay.
yeah.
Randy or
Somebody gets
Kelly.
credit for it. Fantastic. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Then that motion carries. Okay, so then on to new business, consideration of an MOU with American Public Square.
Yeah, so American Public Square, we've had partnerships with them before in the past. It's deliberative dialogue where people come and talk about issues facing communities. It's free. Sometimes we've broadcast, they've been simulcast on NPR. It's great. It's kind of the political, I don't want to say political, but what you call political issues, but they've been depoliticized. They'll bring in subject matter experts, talk about that. Often it's professors who have done studies on such things as affordable housing, fair wages, race projects, zoning laws, all of those types of things. And I've found that the partnership, they've brought a lot of value to the community, and I support this MOU going forward.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns about this MOU? Since I don't hear any, I would take a motion, please.
I move that the Johnson County Library Board of Directors approves the American Public Square at Jewel and Johnson County Library Memorandum of Understanding for the year 2022.
This is Mitra. I'll second.
Fantastic. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. And old business.
This is just procedural. It's the formal approval of the CRP plan, which we've gone through, which encompasses both the new buildings that we're doing and the repair of the old buildings, and we've covered those in detail. We've also kind of covered those budgetary concerns with the budget committee. I need your approval before I can bring it in front of the CRP committee, which will be the next meeting.
Okay. Any comments, questions, or concerns about this information that we have been through? If there is none, I would take a motion.
This is David. I move the Library Board of Directors approve the proposed 2021 through 2025 capital improvement plan submission.
Second.
And all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe that is the end of our business, Sean, unless there is anything I have missed.
Nope, that concludes everything that I have to report on today.
Okay, fantastic. And hopefully we will see everybody live and in Technicolor and not through a screen in March. So I would take a motion to adjourn.
I move the library board of directors adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second, ayes. That's really a formality, so hooray. Thank you, everybody, for all of your time and attentive listening. And we will see you in March. Thank you very much.